Welcome to 100 Days of Kane. Kate Kennedy, director of the Kane Development Center, has been interviewing people from all over Kane. People who have lived here all their lives, people who have moved here, people who have come here with no previous connection but have made Kane their home. But today, we turn the tables. I'm John Cleveland, and it's my turn to interview Kate Kennedy, director of the Kane Development Center. Kate, you're on.
So this is what it feels like on this side of things.
It's not lost on me that this is the 100th day of the interviews that you started on Alumni Weekend in June, and now the 100th day is Homecoming Weekend in Kane.
That's right.
So what is it that brought you home to Kane?
As you guys all know, Alumni Weekend is a holiday here in Kane, and last Alumni Weekend of 2018 was my 20th class reunion. And I hadn't been home for a long time. You know, my parents had moved away. I just really hadn't been back to visit until my 20th class reunion. And when I came to Kane, it just really touched me. Not only was it the renaissance that we've talked about and heard about with the restaurants opening uptown, the businesses opening, and the energy that's been going on, but there's this nostalgia that just, as soon as I breathed the air in Kane, I just was feeling really drawn back. And so from there, I was finding ways just to get connected even after that weekend. And eventually, this job opened up, so I was able to move back home.
So you had a whole set of skills that you brought with you back here that you developed somewhere else. How was it that you were able to find something that used all the skills that you developed?
I think waiting on the right job, because I really was ready to move up here probably by October of last year. But I really wanted to make sure that it was a job that would fulfill me. And so I just started putting feelers out and letting people know that I was interested. And, when this job opened up, someone thought of me and let me know about it. And it was a perfect match for my skills.
Well, that's interesting because your dad moved here too. Your mom and dad moved here. How did your dad end up coming to Kane?
Yeah, I do love that story. So we moved here in 1990. I was going into 4th grade, and my dad grew up in Moon Township, which is right outside of Pittsburgh. He played on the high school football team, and he was the center, and Dennis Latnauer, who is an attorney in Kane, was the quarterback. And Dennis had a camp in the area since childhood and decided to move here and open a law practice. And my dad was practicing law in Pittsburgh and just kind of got tired of that pace, sort of what we've been hearing from some people that have moved back as well, and decided that he wanted to come and be in practice with Dennis. And so the end of my 3rd grade year, he started coming up to Kane during the week and building his practice. And then when the school year ended, we moved to Spruce Avenue. And that was what started my childhood memories and my love of Kane. And
then he eventually was elected district justice here in Kane.
That's right, in 1994 he started.
So you grew up as the daughter of a judge.
Yes. I guess some women in your family can relate to that.
So you've been back in Kane now for?
Almost 6 months.
It's only 6 months?
Almost, yeah.
My goodness, it seems a lot longer than that. You're a bowl of energy. But you've done this 100 Days of Kane. You've interviewed all sorts of people. Mm-hmm. Are there things you've learned about Kane that you didn't know before?
I would say probably in every single interview, there was at least one thing that I learned that I didn't know. Whether it was something from, the 50s, 60s, and 70s when some people were growing up, different bands that had come to Kane, the teen club. Holy smokes, the teen club must have been everything because so many people have fond memories of that, and I got to hear a lot of great stories about that. Also just about how people's families came to Kane, from the different countries across the world, and the warm reception that they received when they decided to settle in here. So yeah, I'd say every single interview I walked away with a new piece of knowledge that I didn't know.
Well, it sounds like you've heard a lot about people having deep roots in Kane.
That's right, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think that even when people like me who weren't born here, but consider this home, I feel like I have deep roots. And so I think there's just something about this community that is so welcoming that makes people feel really connected no matter how many generations back you go.
Well, then you interviewed a number of people that are not Kane natives, that
Yeah.
moved here from somewhere else that had no connection.
Mhm.
What was it that you discovered that drew them here?
I would say across the board, everyone talked about the people. You know, whether they were from here or they were deciding to move here, the number one reason people feel connected to Kane is the community and the people. Of course, there's, you know, our great outdoor rec that we have here, the forest, and a lot of opportunities in that way. That was mentioned a lot as well. But I would say, by and large, it's the people and the heart of
You just dialed Flying Scooter
Has
Productions.
that been your experience?
Sorry
as
we
well,
missed you,
since you
but
have moved
we
back?
will call you back.
Yes, absolutely.
Let us know who you are,
I think
how,
that it
and
was
when to reach you.
Awesome, because
Thanks.
I already knew a lot of people and was kind of established just from having grown up here. And you know, I always say that Kane is a gift that my parents left me because it was a place to come home to. I don't have siblings, and so to come here is like coming home. But I got to, as an adult now, establish new relationships with people, and people were more, I mean, I went into many people's homes. They welcomed me in to tell their stories. And one of the things that I just think is so Kane is almost so many people offered me a meal afterward. They're like, why don't you stay for dinner? Or here's some cookies to take with you. Or do you want a cup of coffee? Let's sit down and talk even more, you know? And so it's that kind of spirit, I think, that hospitality that is just innate in people here.
Now, you've been all over Kane interviewing people in all sorts of locations, in their homes, in the parks, on the streets. You chose here in the Kane Chapel to be
Yes.
interviewed. Why is that? What is it about this place that drew you here?
Yeah, I think this is probably my favorite place in all of Kane. When I moved back, I do love history. I've always loved history, but moving back here, I really connected with the Historic Society and started hanging out with them on Wednesday nights to learn about the Kane history, and just learned more about this building. And it's just beautiful. I just feel peaceful in here. And so I just thought this was the most natural spot for us to have it, to kind of honor the love of Kane's history that I have, and to share that beauty in this interview.
In this place that is so memorable of the Kane family, and we see such tangible evidences of General Kane and his remarkable wife and their remarkable children, and what they contributed to the community. We talk now about a brain drain in rural areas, but there's also something going on about a brain gain of people moving into rural areas. Do you sense that? Do you see that?
Oh, definitely, in Kane for sure. I think one of the unique things about this Renaissance is there are a lot of people in their 20s and 30s moving back home and then investing their resources and their talents into the community. So whether they're buying buildings and fixing them up so they can be rental properties, or buying buildings and starting new businesses, or volunteering their time on many committees that are giving back to the community with ideas maybe that they got from other places. I definitely see that energy happening right here. And one thing I want to say about General Kane and Elizabeth Kane, but you know, I guess both of them, is just this like spirit of like social justice and like rooting for the underdog, and not just rooting for them, but taking action for them and giving them voice. And that's another thing that I think is really lived on in Kane too, is this idea of like just wanting to lift everyone up together. So I love that about this place.
Well, it is interesting. I think that a lot of places refer to themselves as boroughs or cities or townships or villages, but Kane is always referred to as a community.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think that probably goes back to just what you're saying, to General Kane and his wife, who had this vision of what a community should be, what people living together, supporting each other, having roots and connections, what a difference that can make in people's lives.
Absolutely. And so for those of you who have followed this, every Wednesday night was History Night. And so we'd heard stories about Kane's history. And there's a couple things that I loved. Wendy Oakes said at one point, Kane is a place that someone chose to settle. It wasn't because it was necessarily near a river or resources or anything. He loved this area and he chose it. And so that in and of itself makes it a really special place. So I think that's right. It was intentionally planned. It is a community, and that really lives on today.
So you work in the Kane Community Development Center.
Yes.
And what is that exactly?
It's the overarching umbrella that supports and connects the Chamber of Commerce, the CARE organization, which focuses on revitalization, and KAIDC, which focuses on industry development.
And you are the hub of all three of those organizations?
Yep.
And plus the Chamber of Commerce. of
Yes,
course.
right. So I go to the board meetings of those three and kind of hear all the different pieces of conversations going on, and then sometimes two things from two different organizations or other places in the community connect in my brain, and I can help people make those connections to different resources and each other.
We hear over and over again, people say, well, there's a spark in Kane. Something's going on in Kane. What's happening in Kane? Not just locally, but regionally and even throughout the state. What do you say when people ask, well, what's going on in Kane? What are you doing there?
I think it's this really grassroots movement. So it's one of those things that I know people are like, we want to make this happen in our community, and I do believe that it can happen in other communities. I think each community just kind of has to find their own, group to just feel it in their bones. Like I know Royce Novosel Johnson has talked about the grit that people in Kane have, and I think that's absolutely true. And it's that grit and that desire, like no matter what is going on around us, we are gonna, make a difference, and we're gonna make something happen. And there's just a core group of people, and then there's also those people that have had the grit to sustain for decades, even when things got really hard here. And so the combination of the two is really what is, I think, coming together at this very moment to make it happen, make this movement happen.
Do you sense in talking with those people that have come from other places, either come home to Kane or chose to make Kane their home, is there some sort of sense of longing about being in a more simple, rural setting? What is it that leads to that attraction, if you're able to identify anything?
I think some people in the interviews have touched on this, and I know from my own personal experience. One of the things I love is that it really doesn't take long to get from place to place. So even though a lot of people are really busy, you're not sitting in traffic for an hour to get to one place. You don't have to plan months in advance to meet up with friends or things like that, because it has to be a central location or something. So I think the pace, just not having to have that wear of like traffic and busyness. And then again, it's that it is a smaller community, so you're just more connected. You have that level of accountability with one another, because you're gonna see someone in the grocery store, you're gonna see them in the park, you're gonna see them all over town. And so you have a sense of accountability that's not always there in some bigger places that I think people do long for. They wanna be known, they wanna be seen. And so this is a place where that can happen.
Well, Kate, thank you very much for everything you're doing in Kane to help Kane make the great community that it is.
Well, thank you.
And if any of you watching 100 Days of Kane are interested in coming home or making Kane your home, let us know. Send Kate your resume. Maybe someone looking for someone that has just the skills you need will be interested in talking with you. Come home to Kane. It's a great place to live.